So let's talk about this New York Times Square card on the aftermath side of things and just see how much Turki Alalshikh got robbed that weekend. Firstly, let's talk about the pay-per-view situation. There were two cards, Friday night and Saturday night. The Saturday night card was in Riyadh and Canelo was the headliner against William Skull. That was $60 by itself. Then you had the New York Times Square Friday night card, which was also $60 by itself. But the bargain was, if you bought both cards, you would get both of them for $89, which seemed reasonable from my position watching what happens in America and Americans paying $80 for one card. And basically they're really paying $80 or $90 for one fight, because it's really on them pay-per-view cards most of the time, it's only the main event fight that is actually worth watching. So I'm thinking that must be a deal for them Americans. It's got to be a deal for them. I weren't going to be staying up to watch these fights, but I definitely thought if I was in America and I was used to paying for pay-per-views, I would definitely buy both of these. But what I would have definitely discovered is that I would have been so disappointed and I would have wanted my money back. Now, that's not why I'm saying Turki Alalshikh got robbed. I'm thinking about the fact that, one, he had to corner off Times Square. Now, let's talk about this cornering off Times Square thing. When they advertised this, they said it would be open for the public to just be able to walk by and look over there, and there's a fight going on in the ring over there, right in the middle of Times Square. First and foremostly, it was slap bang in the middle of Times Square. But secondly, it had some big barricades all around it, a roof on top of it. They said that if you were in any of those buildings surrounding the area, you would be able to look out of your window and look down into the ring and watch it from that vantage point. That wasn't true. They said you'd be able to walk around and walk beside the ring while you're walking through New York, Manhattan, Times Square area. That wasn't true. The people, the general public, were barricaded off across the street on the other side of the sidewalk, across the street on the sidewalk. They said you were able to just drive through and do every normal, everyday thing that happens in New York. That wasn't true. They barricaded off areas where you weren't allowed to go through there. You weren't allowed to do this. You weren't allowed to do that. Beside the ring was an exclusive seating area just for special guests. That's it. The only people that could see the actual fight were the people on the ring side of the whole barricading thing, which was basically the special guests, the trainers, friends and family, some friends and family, and so forth. There was not a big crowd for the fights because everybody was locked out behind these barricades, these big high boards that had Ring Magazine written on it. So that's all you could really see. That was also deceptive. That would have been so disappointing if anyone done what I wanted to do and just go over there just for the fight and just be thinking, yeah, I'm going to come out my hotel, walk down the road and go and see what's going on down there. Or I'm going to sit down here from early morning and I'm going to stay here all day till they come. That wasn't the case. The only time you could actually see the fighters is when they're pulling up in these cars that were bringing them to the ring. And even then, you were cordoned off. You wouldn't have been able to really see them unless you was at the real right front of the barricade situation. They had all these screens around the place that was showing the fights as they were happening. But you might as well just go home and watch it at home. But it was pay-per-view. So if you didn't want to pay pay-per-view and you lived in the New York area, you could just go to Times Square and watch it on the big screen. And then you would have been even more disappointed because the fights were basically boring sparring matches. They had fights that were recorded as the lowest punch output of any fight in the history of a 12-round fight. This is ridiculously terrible optics. You might as well have had this indoors somewhere. Because if you're going to have a fight that's in the middle of the street, you want fighters. Not these guys that are going to prance around the ring doing the waltzing Matilda and all of this stuff. So, you paid these guys to have these fights and they didn't entertain anybody. And I know that you paid these guys a buku load of money. So, paying these guys buku loads of money to do nothing in the ring. You had all these ambulance services out there. None of them had to do any work, really and truly. So all that stuff that you had to pay for with all the medical services and stuff like that, that was unnecessary. All cordoning off Times Square, that must have cost you a pretty penny. You done it. So all in all the totals put together, paying each one of these fighters their inflated prices that they probably didn't ask for. You probably just said, look, this is how much I'm going to pay you, because you know that you have to give them buku cash for them to even say yes anyway. And I'm not even looking into people's pay packages and how much they got paid for the night. I don't care. I just know that it was a lot more than they were actually worth. So in this sense here, on Friday night, the Sheikh was robbed by the fighters, and he robbed himself by spending all that money in the New York area to cordon off Times Square. I know it was for this Fatal Fury game that you lot are trying to promote. It's just, if you're promoting a game that says Fatal Fury, you need to have some guys out there that are going to do some Fatal Fury stuff. Now, Rolly versus Ryan should have been that fight, because Rolly is limited with his knowledge of boxing and Ryan Garcia is limited with his abilities. But they both usually come to have a fight. But where Ryan is obviously suffering from some sort of PTSD, once he took that first shot in the second round, he was like, I don't want to fight no more. Plus, he had all these excuses at the end about it felt like it was a sparring match. He felt like it was just odd and all of this type of stuff. Everyone's saying that's because you never had the Osterine in your system anymore. And there goes another cost, paying for this stringent VADA testing that everybody had to go through. Turkey just spending money hand over fist right about now. So that's the New York card. Very much anticlimax, a very disappointing afternoon and evening of boxing, night of boxing. And then we went over to the Saudi card where Canelo and William Skull headlined. And that fight there was also a bore fest. So Turkey flew all the way from Times Square to Saudi for him to be able to see the fight the next night. Bringing some of them guys that were over in New York with him over there to watch this rubbish. As I said, he should have stayed in America and went to Vegas instead to go and watch Inouye, his latest signing. But he wanted to see the great Canelo do this stuff against William Skull. Now, obviously, these guys didn't do their research well enough to see that these guys are not going to fight on the night. Devin Haney should have actually been the first fight of that card if you're going to put Devin Haney on that card, because of his scarcity to want to engage in fighting. And then he's also obviously going through PTSD with the fact that he got beaten up by Ryan Garcia in his last fight. So he doesn't even want to get touched in the ring. And poor old Jose Ramirez didn't have enough capabilities to close the ring down properly to get in there and go for it and get him out of there, which I think he could have done more, to be fair, just like I think Canelo could have done more. And with Canelo not doing enough to entertain the crowd and Skull not doing anything at all but running around the ring doing laps and all sorts of different dancing patterns, that was another diabolical card all in all. But yet again, you're paying these guys buku money, and we know that Canelo gets paid more than everybody. And you said that the fights that are happening in Saudi, these fighters over there will get paid more than if it wasn't in Saudi. So then again, you're splurging big money on them fighters as well. Bare losses all over the place. This was definitely a wasteful weekend for Turki Alalshikh, and this is why I say he has been robbed by the boxing community. And what's the common denominator of all these guys that are robbing Turki Alalshikh? They all seem to come from the America side of the world. If it's not Mexico or Cuba, it's North America. And these are the boxers that he's really trying to promote. And these are the boxers that are not producing because they all think that they're all slick boxers when they're all just boring dancers in the ring. That's what they are. They think they're imitating Floyd. They're just not. They just don't know what they're doing. And they don't want to get touched. And it's not entertaining, but you're paying them big money. So since you've brought in these Americans, you have got the worst showing of the whole time you've been promoting these fights. And it's not all the Americans. It's just these particular ones on this card. Canelo, I give him a slight bly because William Skull done his best impression of Devin Haney. And in his post-fight presser, he said he thought he was controlling the fight after 5 rounds. And he thought he was winning. I don't know what type of boxing makes you think that you're winning when you're just running away and not throwing any punches. I don't get it. It reminds me of when Broner said he thought he was winning against Pacquiao and he weren't doing anything. Pacquiao was papping him up and he thought he was winning the fight. Ridiculous notion. Once again, these guys have got some crazy thought processes thinking that they're winning the fight by running away. The only person that did that over the weekend was Devin Haney, and that's only because Jose Ramirez was very limited in his attacking efforts. But the one person who saved the night and earned his money correctly was not American. The big bad monster, Inoue, saved the day. So, in total, Turkey has been robbed this past weekend of whatever money he's spending on these guys, which makes me really believe that this sports washing thing might actually be a thing for real. Because he's saying that I'm still going to use Devin Haney, I'll still use Ryan Garcia, but Ryan Garcia was doing so badly that apparently, according to Rolly Romero, the Sheikh came up to the ring and said, Ryan, what are you doing? Throw punches. And I can really believe that. There's no footage of it, but I believe it. Come up to the ring and say, Ryan, throw punches, boy. What are you doing? But he's adamant that he's still going to use these guys. And so, may it continue. He's obviously got plans that he's not making us aware of. Do your thing. But if you get robbed again, my guy, don't blame me. Hear me? I'm telling you already, you got robbed. And if you want to continue getting robbed, you're going to be hard-pressed to convince most people that you're not sports washing, bruh. You're not doing some sort of tax evasion thing. I don't know. It's not my business to know. All I know is that you forked out a pretty penny for a whole load of toilet stuff. Things that you put in the toilet and flush. That's what you paid for the weekend the other day. Anyway, I just thought I'd touch on that and give my views on that because it was a wasteful weekend of boxing. And these American fighters have a lot to answer for. And I'm going to do a video about that in the future. But as for now, I'll see you guys in the next video.